Hi everyone, we're glad that you're here with us today. My name is Mary Geller. I'm the Associate Vice Provost for Student Success, Student Development, and I have with me Val Jones from Institutional Advancement St. Ben's and John Andrick, Dean of Student Success for St. John's and St. Ben's. I just wanted to open up today by stating that we're just kind of cracking open a conversation today. We are by no means experts, nor do we have all the answers, but we thought that we would begin to have a conversation about what it means to be a college for men and a college or university for men and a college for women today. And Val is going to open up with some comments, and then John is going to talk about what does that mean for the curricular. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some work we're doing on developing a residential model, a co-curricular model. After each of our presentations, we really want this session to be engaging, so we're going to have questions for you. And we want you to have some discussions at your table. We got some really, really good feedback from the last session, and we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Val, and we will get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. So we're here today to begin the work of illuminating a mission element in the CSB and SJU relationship that so far, under strong integration, has remained relatively unexplored in the context of what it means to be a college for women and a university for men. Yet this topic is never more than an adjective, a pronoun, or a division of labor conversation away from our daily work. We're here today to talk about gender and what it means to these two institutions built on the gender binary and remaining in the gender binary while holding an expanding understanding of gender as a social construct with a wide array and expansive array of expressions and identities and its impact on our daily work, society, and the lives and outcomes of CSB and SJU students. We do not have to look far to see gendered expressions that impact our students. From our own origin stories to headlines in the news like this one, to example after example right here on campus. First year traditions for the incoming classes at first year dinners. Bennies have a candle lighting ceremony. Johnnies have a medal pinning ceremony in connection to two different school mottos. The Bennies in Business Club started because of a sentiment that their voices weren't being heard in their major, and they wanted to seek out the company and mentorship of other women in business. Gendered divisions of labor in our own departments. Who takes notes at our meetings? Who makes coffee? Who cleans up at the end of the day in our spaces? Who takes on additional committee assignments? We have a unique opportunity to talk about men and to talk about women and all of the identities in between, to illuminate gender and how its social constructs impact everyday life so that we and students can learn how to navigate in a gendered world. If we ignore gender, we aren't setting our students up to navigate in a gendered world post-graduation. If we ignore gender or dismiss the gender binary, creating unrealistic expectations about those very constructs, we make the world less safe, not more safe, for those who don't identify with that binary. Yes, gender is a construct, and the implications are real, but by not addressing that dimension of social identity, that has an impact too, regardless of what that identity is. So today, as Mary said, we're just going to crack open this topic as a community. Today, this is not a debate. This is not a discussion on the merits or decision of being a university for men and a college for women. Today, will you engage and participate in reflection and dialogue about how we can illuminate the mission element of gender on our campuses? At your tables is a notepad and a pen. Please, one person at your tables, take notes at each table and capture the highlights from your discussion. Here are your first two questions for the day. What does this mission element of gender mean to me, my area, and my institution or institutions in this moment? Second question, how can I or my team animate the mission element of gender in our areas? You'll have about 7 to 8 minutes at your tables to discuss these first two questions. Please begin. All right, everybody, that was about 7 minutes or so. Let's see if anyone has a really insightful comment to share after these first two questions. Is there anyone from any table that has a lovely observation to share? Don't be shy. This is the easiest topic in the world to talk about.
I appreciate that you positioned it as an observation. Because I don't have anything insightful to say. I came in 2 months ago on the marketing team, and I do not know how to make that opening pitch of us being gender colleges to 16-year-olds. I think that's a less and less, that's a harder and harder conversation to have. And I don't think there is any easy answer to that, and maybe there never will be. But it's something I spend a lot of time thinking about.
Great, well, thank you for doing the thinking. That's a great first step. Thank you for that observation as well.
I did.
Thank you. Kevin, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, Val, so just an observation from my area. I work in the Center for Global Education. We promote programs equally across St. Ben and St. John's. We're a joint office, but when it actually comes to the scholarship money that we're able to award students, we actually, in this case, have a disproportionate amount of money for Benny's than we do for Johnny's, which is, I think, is fantastic that we have so much for Benny's. But ideally, we'd like to have money that we could provide equally to students as they apply to programs, but we're kind of left having to make money based off the scholarship allocations that we have that are based on gender.
Right, so we're dealing with a gendered access issue in your case. Great observation, thank you.
If we're working global business, we have started the discussion of looking at 20-year data. So when you look at the business discipline, global business, usually management, economics, economic and finance, it's the women to men ratio is historically for the last 30 years. This department became separate 40 years ago. It has been around 20 to 30% women to men. When in business, it's usually 50-50. And this has been for 30 years going on in this institution. So we are really trying to find what's going on and how we can change it.
That's a great observation and an interesting, long-lasting pattern. So thank you for those observations. We're going to keep moving. Again, we're cracking things open here, so we're going to move along quickly and turn it over to John.
So for those of you that don't know me or my position, I'm John Andrick. I'm the Dean for Student Academic Success. So as we were thinking about these questions, certainly that's the lens through which I'm considering this question of gender and thinking about these terms. So when I started thinking about how we might want to talk about student success and gender, 3 things really came to mind for me: this sense of belonging, our curriculum, and then some targeted opportunities that we might be able to consider. And then in a lot of ways, those things boil down to sort of 3 words for me as well. So there's a challenge here, we've made a commitment here, and then I think there's some, again, to use the word opportunities here. So gender and sense of belonging. So this is a paraphrase quote from the book Relationship Rich Education that says, all students need to understand that they are valued as people. This is prerequisite to believing that they belong on campus, which is essential for persistence in academic success, which, obviously that sort of encompasses a lot of the way that I have to think about my work is how do we give them what's essential to persistence in academic success. And so this question of gender leads into that, and it's a challenge for us in that we say we affirm and we celebrate and we, the breadth of gender expressions and identities, and yet one of the first things that we ask them to do is enroll at St. John's or enroll at St. Ben's in a gendered way. So that's a challenge for us. But we've made a commitment as an institution to explore these topics. So both inside and outside of the curriculum, the institutional learning goal of Embrace Difference talks about we're going to show the ability to engage the world through the lens of gender with an appreciation for human differences. 2 courses that are embedded into the integrations curriculum, the Cultural and Social Difference Identity course and the Cultural Social Difference Systems course both have learning outcomes built into them that talk about gender as identity and gender in systems. So clearly we've made a commitment academically to help our students explore these topics and to come out of the institutions with an understanding of them. And then there's opportunities for us, I think, to think about gender in some ways that maybe some of our peers at other institutions can't do. So this is data that came out of the counseling office. These are clinician descriptions of presenting concerns for students. And so you can see at each of the institutions, the lists are relatively similar, but the order in which or the intensity with which these things present themselves aren't the same. So when we think about ways in which we might support our students differently, targeting them, so to use a different example, maybe we think about first gen versus not first gen, we can target supports to first gen students in different ways than we would to non-first gen students. If we recognize a difference in who our students at St. John's are versus who our students at St. Ben's are, that gives us an opportunity to, again, sort of target supports and resources to students based on the needs of those students. So there's some opportunity here as well. So I want to turn it over to you to give you a chance to discuss some of these things. So how is your department thinking and talking about gender as it relates to your work with students, particularly through that success lens? And what are some possible advantages of us being gendered institutions that could allow us to promote student success? We'll be back in just a minute. So I just want to again say thanks to everybody that's here and for being willing to jump into this conversation. I know for me personally, this was something that I felt horribly inadequate to be a part of because I'm no expert on any of these sorts of things. But I think it's important for us to have these conversations, and I wanted to be a part of it. So even in my inadequacy, I wanted to be here, and I hope you all are leaning into this as well and enjoying the conversation. So any thoughts at tables that people would want to share? Things you talked about regarding these 2 questions? Emily?
Shameless plug. Additional thing that we have in the curriculum is a newly revised gender studies minor that is easily accessible to students and trains students in EIJ cultural ability skills that students can access. And also, I think a really important thing that departments should be thinking and talking about is inclusive teaching practices. Because inclusive teaching practices are what can help departments and majors, particularly that have gendered discrepancies in terms of number of majors, and just actually frankly benefits all students, is creating collaborative learning environments and environments where students feel comfortable and mentored and like they fit in classrooms, because it benefits all students, but it particularly benefits women and queer students feel like they fit in the classroom, and it elevates the learning space for everyone when that happens.
Thank you. Others want to share out from your conversations? What's some advantages? That's a tricky question. Any advantages that you all talked about at your tables about being gendered institutions?
I mean, we talked about like the example that Val had about Benedict in business. As a alum of St. Ben's, maybe I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, I was able to take more leadership roles in classes or on campus because it was a specific gender environment, which I might necessarily not have volunteered for or taken or had the opportunity to if it had been like, CSP Senate or, things like that, they were separate. And so I think there are benefits, and, with the Bennies in business, like they have women who have gone through it ahead of them come back and talk to them or mentor them. And I think there are a lot of women, venues and elsewhere, who want to come back and help other generations forward. And so I think oftentimes it can be easy, in that way. Like, I can't speak to it as far as St. John's goes. I'm sure they have a similar experience around gender, but like I can see like that being appealing to women who might not take the opportunity or get opportunities if it was not a gender privilege.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
We had talked in our group, just mentioned that there can be some comfort depending on the demographic. There can be some comfort for being around like people, but then that can also be alienating. I just think of like the example of a young woman who's experienced sexual trauma might find comfort in being around a certain type of people afterwards. So having more close contact with women might be potentially beneficial in that case. Just some things like that, but then potentially alienating to people who identify otherwise.
Anyone else? One more comment before I turn it over. There was lots of good conversation happening. I could hear it. So don't be shy. Yeah.
Just the sports opportunities that the two schools offer are. I think I've heard that if we were to like merge, that would really cut down on the sports opportunities that we can offer.
Great. Thank you again. I'm going to turn it over to Mary.
Thank you, John. All right. So John talked a little bit about this topic as it relates to the classroom and belonging, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the residential curricular model. And mostly I just kind of want to introduce you to the concept of it and where we are in our process thus far. What is the residential curricular model? It begins with the educational priority that's rooted in institutional mission and purpose. And so right there, when we're talking about the residential curricular model, it's like, do we have one? Do we have two? Because do we have one for St. John's and one for St. Ben's? Do we have one for all students? I mean, how do we approach this work? Which is kind of how we came up with this topic today. We have a distinction that we're a Benedictine community, and as such, our practice underscores the fact that we learn from living in intentional community. It's why we have a 4-year residency, and it's part of the hallmark of a Benedictine education is that you learn in community. We learn about ourselves by being in a relationship with others. And I want to be clear, when I talk about the residential curriculum, it's sometimes called the co-curricular, we do mean the entirety of the experience for residential. I'm not talking about just residence life. I'm talking about all of the interactions students have outside of the classroom experience. We know that we tend not to be a suitcase campus. Our students stay here throughout the weekend. They're here in the evenings. And what kind of experience are we providing for those students, and what are we hoping they're experiencing and learning? The curricular model was developed in 2017 by Kara and colleagues. And like I said, it was rooted in mission. This repeats a little bit, but it is a comprehensive campus approach, and as such, those of us working on the residential model are from areas all across the campus. It's not just student development. We've got a lot of different folks on this committee. The co-curricular model, the residential model, is a pedagogical design. It reflects intentionality, structure, and sequencing, similar to curricular models, and it utilizes academic majors in the co-curricular experience. So a lot of times, some of you may have experienced the living learning communities and residence halls that partner. We have one here with Dr. Ragoza for Women in STEM. It produces learning outcomes that are clear and measurable. So it's not just kind of these random events and activities, but there's a purpose to it. There's a learning outcome we want students to have as a result of being engaged in that particular activity. The benefits of a curricular model that have been proven are that it provides a clear vision of the intended learning outcomes for students. So we let students know in advance, here are the things that we want you to learn as a result of living on campus, as a result of being a student employee, as a result of getting involved in clubs and organizations. It reduces campus conduct interventions because students know what their expectations are, and it creates a net of support around them. It increases students' persistence, satisfaction, and their sense of belonging, which is important. It decreases crisis management, and it becomes more proactive as staff drive early interventions. So we're lucky here in that we're high touch, but it means you're in relationship with students and you're working with them on their self-identified, the things that they want to learn. The professional staff find the process more rewarding because it's a pedagogical approach and they know how to structure that, and they feel more valued as educators. So that's just some of the background about what a residential co-curricular model is. Now what I'm about to show you is a drafty draft. So I want to be really clear about that. Like I literally mean, if you could see this, you try and move this around. I built this, like every little piece and part has to be moved if you're moving it around. But there are some basic campus documents and things that our group studied that are we're starting to lay out some of our conceptual ideas around what a co-curricular residential model could look like. So we started with the two model approach, and at the center, we have placeholders. We have empowered women for St. Ben's and men of character at St. John's. But surrounding that, everything is pretty similar. So we've tapped into the wellness model, looking at a student from a holistic perspective, developing students from a holistic perspective is kind of the second tier. And then of course we have our institutional learning outcomes that drive all of that work. And around all of it, we're surrounded by our Benedictine charism, our Benedictine character, our Benedictine mission. And so with that, we want to leave you with these two questions. What would it look like across the institutions if we embraced the work of developing men of character and empowered women? And we got some really good feedback from the last group, so I can't wait to see what you guys say. And then how do we judge the effectiveness of our work in this area? And so I'll just leave you to talk about these two questions. Thank you.
Put a name next to it.
All right, does anybody have any comments that they would want to share from these two questions? The first question, what would it look like across the institutions if we embrace the work of developing men of character and empowered women? Any thoughts?
This was not mine, this was from Emily, but I thought it was wonderful. So when you look at the first question, the important thing to focus on, not so much the men and the women, the character and the empowerment. And so how do you sell it to 16-year-olds? You sell it to 16-year-olds as you can be this empowered location for women and other women who support you and all these sorts of things. And how do you sell it to 16-year-old men? This is about character. This is about how you develop healthy masculinity. It's the character and the empowerment, not the gender, that is what's important.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Taking that one step further, maybe this doesn't exactly answer the question. We talked a lot about having a common curriculum model where it's not about developing men of character, right, which suggests that men need character, right, but rather students of character who are empowered, instead of separating them further by gender, right, and emphasizing that difference in gender, but bringing them together and saying all of our students are going to have good character and all of our students are going to be empowered regardless of gender identity.
Yes. Yeah, we've talked about that, and one of the things he said is maybe the strategies you use could be different depending upon if you're working with Bennies or you're working with Johnnies. So yes, thank you very much for that comment. Back here.
I think that the strategies piece is an important part though still, because to address different audiences, I mean toxic masculinities are real and they're an important problem, but they're a different sort of problem than may face others, right? So
Correct.
I think making sure that those strategies map out is going to be an important part for
Agreed.
effectively doing that.
100%. Thank you. Maybe one more comment?
Just a question. Are you pulling those snippets directly from the mission? Like doesn't the Johnny's mission, like at a high level, include the phrase men of character?
Yes, it does. And these were pulled from some of the documents that we were studying. so they didn't, they were kind of grounded in that, but we're not sold on this 100%, so just remember, like I said, it's draft to draft, so. Okay. What about how do we judge the effectiveness of our work in this area? Yeah, Chuck.
Well, the first thing that was striking for me was that when we were in the slide that introduced the co-curricular pedagogical model, it was underneath that, it was said to increase certain things, decrease other things, increase certain things, decrease other things, and I was wondering, do we have evidence of that already? Do we know that to be the case with this model, that it has, in fact, these effects that have been measured? And has it been measured among our students? I was just very curious about that.
For those who have had a residential model, other campuses, yes. These are outcomes that they have measured. We have not implemented it yet on our campus. We're still building the model. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I just, I wonder, what day is today? Tuesday. It all runs together. So I appreciate your time and attention on this Tuesday afternoon, on this warm, beautiful Tuesday afternoon that you've chosen to be here with us. Thank you so much for engaging in this conversation. This is a hard conversation. And like I said when I started, we don't purport to be experts in this, but we do think as a community it is important for us to have these conversations as we move into strong integration and still have our identities as a College of St. Benedict and St. John's University. So thank you all for your input, and I'll collect your notes. If you want to hand them to me, I would appreciate it. Thank you all and have a great day.